Hi, I'm a sweaty little boy, and this is my wife Amy. She's a normie, not a gamer. I asked her to play Elden Ring as a little experiment. What I didn't tell her is that it's one of the most brutal and unforgiving games of all time. And for the next 11 days, she struggled while I sat there offering almost no help and silently taking notes like a psycho. When you start a new game, it hits you with a bunch of options like auto target and ray tracing. And Amy goes, I don't know what any of this means. I tell her not to worry about it. When she first saw the wretch, she said, "That's creepy, where are their clothes?" And I was like, up your little butt. She had no idea what a vagabond was, and I was like, I think it's some kind of financial product. When she got to the astrologer, she said, what are they gonna do, read my star sign? Astrologer mains have been in shambles ever since. She went with warrior because they, quote, look cool and strong. After about 15 minutes in the character creator, she had several criticism ranging from, why does it let me make a face so ugly? To, why does it take so long to rotate my girl? Eventually saying, I don't know why this is even relevant. I just want to give up because it's so tedious, but I don't like the way I look. That's a huge retweet from me. I think she thought she had to go through every single line item in the character creator and adjust it accordingly. I didn't have the heart to tell her she'd be wearing a helmet and probably wouldn't see her character's face ever again. Then we get a 4-minute intro cutscene, which to her credit, she tried so hard to follow. Her commentary went like this: it's a bit slow, isn't it? Then 2 minutes later, it's so slow, I don't even know what's happening. Then at the end, I'm confused, I don't know what this game is about. To which I said, that's exactly the point. After reading the first message, she said, oh, so I have to be an Elden Lord. And I was like, let's not get ahead of ourselves. But technically, yes. When the grafted scion appeared, she naturally got jump scared in real life and said, oh, I don't like that. I feel like I'm in the deep end. Bless her little heart, she mostly just panic jumped until death. After the fade to black, she said, I think I died. Do I have to start again? I was like, no, you did pretty good actually. The fact that she landed one light attack was better than I thought.
Hi, it's me, Masculine Man. I've got a tiny rod and huge balls. Sadly, you're still using your phone for directions while I navigate with the stars and the whisper of the wind. That technique is only possible with Manscaped, and specifically their Beard and Balls bundle. Hey, I used to be a runt like you, average, and unable to choose between two nearly identical shades of white. But now, I point at colors and they rename themselves in my honor. The truth is, right now you look fragile and untested by battle. But after using the Lawnmower 5, you could build castles by hand, catch lightning, or high-five a bear so hard it works part-time as your butler. The Beard Hedger makes me look so masculine, my sweat smells like victory, and my footsteps leave motivational quotes in the sand. Aren't you sick of your own reflection being embarrassed to associate with you? Grooming with Manscaped is the only solution. It will give you a reality-shattering aura of unstoppable greatness, but only if you go to manscaped.com and use code JAZZ for 20% off, plus free international shipping. Sponsored by Manscaped and a volcanic eruption.
After another cutscene, Amy's first big pop-up introduces two items, the health flask and the focus point flask. Red for health, blue for mana, and green for stamina is a color scheme as old as time and my wrinkly little balls. But only if you're a gamer. For Amy, this means nothing, and already we have a huge knowledge gap. Either FromSoft didn't think explaining health was important, or they couldn't imagine someone playing this game that doesn't already know what that is. The next message reads, the cave of knowledge lies below. Then they hit her with a full pop-up being like, please do not miss this tutorial if you need it. It's right there. Then if you speak to the guy, he tells you to jump down and learn stuff. This is basically 3 unskippable ads before a YouTube video, and it was very helpful. As Amy jumps down the first ledge, a smaller pop-up appears labeled using items, telling her to press square. It's meant to teach her how to use the flasks, but it is diabolically unclear. Also, she's had multiple different things pop up since she found the flasks, so she does not make the connection. There's too many things to connect there. Amy leaps casually off the second ledge into the tutorial cave. After landing, she asks, why didn't that hurt me? Shouldn't my legs be broken? She has a physiotherapist background, so that is an appropriate medical question. Another big pop-up appears, this time about sites of grace. It says they restore health, FP, cleanse ailments, and refill sacred flasks. Her 2 questions at this time were, what does any of this mean? And why are the enemies being revived? That's the problem with gamer buzzwords and assumed knowledge. It's kind of tricky. The next small pop-up introduces lock-on, an essential mechanic in Elden Ring. It's surprising that something so important is given 0 explanation. The text also mentions reset camera and remove target, listing 3 different actions. So at a glance, all these things seem equally important, with reset camera being mentioned first. So the implication is that maybe it's the most important, when in reality, lock-on is 99 out of 100 important, and reset camera, remove target target are 1 out of 100. It's amazing the insignificant tiny details that really matter when viewed through the eyes of a non-gamer. Even the overall size of the banner and the amount of time it's on screen is a factor. Because right away, Amy said, that pop-up was too small and disappeared too fast for me to read. Not even kidding, it's only on screen for 2.5 seconds, which is actually kind of insane. Also, we were playing on our living room TV, which is 55 inches, and there's no way to increase the size of the HUD, and most of Elden Ring's text is really small. So Amy struggled to read almost all text that appeared on screen for the entire playthrough. Kind of an oversight, maybe, that we can't make the text bigger in current year of modern game. Elden Ring is so polished in so many areas, but when it came to font size, they were like, F anyone who has a small TV and F anyone who needs glasses to read. My wife is both of those people. The next small pop-up explains how to attack, mentioning RH and two-handed armament. Amy doesn't know that these refer to right hand and two-handed weapons. The word armament adds another layer of confusion. Weapon would have been fine in my opinion. Why'd you get so fancy with it? Amy does press R1 and manages to land a light attack. Then she says, should I have killed him? That felt mean. I tell her that zombie had a family and daddy's never coming home from the mines now, you cold-hearted bitch. Then there's a pop-up for strong attack. It's interesting that the previous one didn't specify light attack for consistency. It's just attack and strong attack. Before she can even do a single strong attack, a big pop-up interrupts her to introduce guarding, which was kind of weird timing. It explains that guarding can be done with a left-handed armament or with both hands. The whole left versus right versus two-handed armaments is completely lost on her, which is fair enough. Also, the images of a character with a shield, but Amy's dual-wielding the scimitars and doesn't have a shield, so she can't guard. She presses L1 as instructed, but instead of guarding, her character performs like a dual-wield / power stance attack. Because of this, blocking doesn't make sense to her, and she never learns how to do it. One of the most critical beginner-friendly mechanics. She's pretty confused and says to me, well, I tried to guard, but he didn't do it. The pop-up also mentions stamina and stance breaks, both of which have not been explained at all yet. Thankfully, dodging, on the other hand, gets a well-deserved big pop-up. It explains dodge rolls and backsteps, though it doesn't present both equally. In reality, dodge rolls are way more important than backsteps. Amy tries to dodge, but struggles because she has to look down at the controller to press circle, so she takes her thumb off the left stick, which causes her to backstep instead of roll. She thinks she's dodge rolling successfully, but she's actually just missed the most important mechanic in Elden Ring. Ew. After closing the dodge pop-up, Amy is startled by a zombie rushing at her. She hadn't noticed this one on the way in. Pay attention. LMAO. After she killed him, I said, show me your dodge roll one more time, hoping she would sense something was wrong. She just spammed backstep again. But remembering there was supposed to be some kind of stick input, she accidentally presses L3 to crouch and then does an actual dodge roll. Now she thinks to dodge, you have to press L3 plus circle, even though it's just left stick tilt plus circle. Once she'd toggle crouch, she didn't realize you have to untoggle it to stand back up. Lucky for her, when you press jump, the next small pop-up, it untoggles crouch automatically. While reading the dash info, she gets railed by a crossbow bolt and goes, wait, how do I get the arrow out of my head? I said, just be grateful you didn't take an arrow to the knee. She's like, why, is that worse than in your head? And I'm like, it's a long story, you uncultured swine. Amy successfully pulls off the dash combo, which is great. Why don't they call it sprint though? That makes me mad. Then comes the next big pop-up, wielding armaments. This is the weapon system in Elden Ring, and the message says each hand can hold up to 3 armaments, allowing you to toggle between them. For a new player, that's pretty confusing though. Like 3 weapons in one hand? What does that even mean? I'm dumb and stupid and dehydrated. The pop-up also mentions that you can two-hand a weapon, which can be a very important mechanic depending on what you're using. Amy does successfully toggle off her right-hand weapon right away, so that's a win. She struggles against the shielded guard though. I can see she's trying to get behind him by the way she's wildly swinging the camera around, but she doesn't quite have the coordination yet. Still, she kills him, then pauses and asks, wait, what was that pop-up saying again? How do I toggle my weapons? She messes around with different buttons for a while trying to figure it out. I'm staying completely silent as usual. Eventually she manages to two-hand a weapon, but she doesn't know why it's useful. The game doesn't really explain the difference between two-handing versus dual-wielding versus power stancing, because F us, the players, am I right? Next is a small pop-up for changing targets. It assumes that Amy knows how to lock onto an enemy, something she hasn't done yet. Then while approaching an archer, she dodges multiple times. The timing couldn't be more wrong and she gets hit multiple times, but the effort was there. The next big pop-up introduces weapon skills. It says armaments have special abilities called skills, ranging from powerful attacks to temporary effects, and that skills consume FP. Amy still has no idea what FP is, but here's the good part. She presses L2 right away. I was generally pumped because with every new mechanic, it's kind of a toss-up whether she'll press the right button. Then surprisingly, we get a big pop-up for crouching. Crouching is such a minor mechanic in Elden Ring, and yet it gets the big boy treatment like weapons and dodging. Meanwhile, using flasks and locking on were small pop-ups with no explanation. How interesting. Following the big crouch pop-up, Amy tries to press L3, but accidentally opens the menu instead. It's her first time seeing the menu, which understandably feels overwhelming with its wealth of information. After closing the menu again, she tries to crouch, but accidentally presses R3, and for the first time ever, locks on. She goes, oh, what's this? It's a huge win, but she still has no idea what she just discovered or how valuable it is. The next small pop-up explains backstabbing, which feels appropriately sized for that mechanic. Amy does land a light attack on the enemy, but doesn't realize the game is trying to teach her to get close enough for a critical hit. Before moving on though, Amy realizes she hasn't fully figured out how to crouch, so experiments with the buttons and eventually presses L3, very nice. Next comes a big pop-up for stance breaking, which focuses on jump attack. The image shows an awesome looking jump attack with the instructions prompting her to press R2 while jumping. Amy attempts it but uses light attack instead. However, she does technically perform a jump attack, which is huge. On top of that, she's locking on, so I'm pogging pretty hard here. Then comes the big pop-up for Stakes of Marika. Questionable whether this mechanic deserved such a big billboard, but all good. Amy steps through the mist for her first boss battle. And look, to her, this may as well be the Elden Beast. As she approaches, she's visibly panicked. But right away the game hits her with another big pop-up, this time for guard counters. The problem is that guard counters assume the player has mastered blocking, which Amy hasn't due to power stancing two weapons. This information is all lost on her. And honestly, she's way too stressed to read the message right now anyway. Despite the interruption, Amy opens with a sick jumping light attack and follows it up by spamming more light attacks. She literally just no-hit the Soldier of God on her first try. Kind of a big cock move. She was pretty pumped and wanted to celebrate, so asked me, how do I emote in this game? I was surprised she even knew about emoting, but then I remembered she'd played a bit of Destiny 2 for a video I made called What Destiny 2 is Like for My Non-Gamer Wife. It turns out the one thing she retained from those 12 hours of gameplay was that you can emote with the D-pad. The feminine urge to play Just Dance runs so deep. She starts spamming the D-pad here, but ends up accidentally toggling her flasks and weapons. When I asked her why she wanted to emote, she said, I don't know, I just want to celebrate that I killed that guy. I explained emoting is done through the menu, and she found it very clunky. She goes, why would I ever do it in the menu? I was like, these stupid devs have prioritized weapons and flasks, and I agree, that's completely out of touch. She then walks past an item and jumps down without grabbing it, thinking she could get back up. She was like, oh, I messed up, I missed that item, and was genuinely sad about it. Gamers, on the other hand, know a one-way ledge when we see one. She opens the door to a room filled with cobwebs, candles, and piles of bones, remarking, everything's a bit creepy in this game, isn't it? I replied, nothing escapes you, my love. Sitting at the side of Grace, Amy immediately clicked past time. I asked her why, because that was kind of specific, and she said, I was hoping it would give me more stuff. Adorable. She then investigates the flask menu saying, what are flasks? I have no idea what these are. The wheels are turning, I'll give her that. Obviously I don't answer. Once she got up and started walking, she said, maybe it only helps your stuff if you have nice stuff. I have no clue what that meant, but I love it. She runs straight past a glowing purple item on a corpse, which is funny because she recognized the white glowing item earlier, but has no recognition for a purple one. Rarity tiers were a thing in Destiny, but that mechanic clearly hasn't stuck at all. Approaching the elevator, the game gets quiet and Amy says, isn't my character a bit heavy-footed? As a physiotherapist, she's hyper aware of like body movements, so knows that the footsteps are loud and knows that it's unrealistic compared to the other sounds. But at last, she steps out into Limgrave. Her first question was, ooh, what is that nice tree? Later she added, it feels very fresh outside, I like it. Something no gamer has ever said, ever. A big pop-up for Guidance of Grace appears, but Amy doesn't understand what it's saying. Naturally, she talks to White Mask. I had been eagerly anticipating this interaction. Sure enough, after he says the line, you are maidenless, Amy goes, well, where do I find a maiden? Who will be my maiden? I told her, that's a great question. But as of right now, unfortunately, you are maidenless. She didn't like that. Looking over the cliff, Amy spots the tree sentinel and says, ooh, he looks like a baddie. I said, how do you know he's a baddie? He might be friendly. She replied, I'm pretty sure he's a baddie. He definitely looks like he's patrolling and he looks mad. I have to admit, That was a great read. My questioning made her doubt herself though, so she went to check and got her little balls crushed. She rolled her eyes and goes, I told you he was a baddie. I was like, yeah, you really effing nailed that actually. After respawning, she gets the pop-up for death, which explains runes and where to retrieve them. After reading it, she asked me, what are runes and why do I need them? I told her, if you don't earn some runes, the government will put you in jail, so get to it. While trying to pick up a nearby fruit for the first time, Amy accidentally presses square instead of triangle and drinks her flask, but she doesn't notice and didn't ask any questions about it, so no breakthrough on the flask. After thinking about the death pop-up again, Amy asks, well, where are my runes? It says I dropped them. I explained it's the little golden icon on the compass. She carefully approaches the area, trying to recover them, but doesn't realize the runes are hidden in a bush. Also, the tree sentinel charges. She tries to flee, but is killed and asks, well, what happened to my runes then? I didn't pick them up. I was like, yeah, unfortunately, you've lost those runes forever. She responded, all right, well, now I'm really mad because I've lost my runes and that sucks. I didn't have the heart to tell her she had 0 runes, so it doesn't matter at all. When she respawned, Amy said, there were so many prompts at the start and I can't remember any of it. I replied, honestly, how stupid are you? I mean, get it together. They do hit you with an avalanche of text walls though. Not to mention overemphasizing some things while underemphasizing others, and you have no context for any of it. It's a hot effing mess. For the next little while, she runs through the trees, happily gathering fruit. I think this kind of low intensity playstyle really appealed to her. It looks like those caveman hunter-gatherer instincts also run quite deep. She stumbles on some minor zombie enemies and accidentally performs her first backstab. This cannon fodder was really good to just get her confidence back up, I think. If the whole game was just huge boss enemies, it would be extra intimidating. But the game actually has kind of a small, medium, and large enemy progression that's pretty good. After defeating the zombies, Amy gets a big pop-up about vanquishing enemy groups, which explains that defeating a group replenishes flasks. The pop-up gets her curious about flasks. For the first time, she intentionally looks at the bottom left of her screen and cycles through the flasks. Then she says, oh, the red and blue ones in the bottom left match the colors of 2 of my bars in the top left. We're so close to a breakthrough, but she doesn't actually drink a flask. I thought maybe she can't remember how to drink or hasn't noticed her health bar is at half or just thinks half is plenty. IDK. After stumbling around for a while, she tells me, I feel completely directionless. I don't know where to go. I said, you just go wherever you want to go. She replied, well, that's really unhelpful.
Finally, she wandered into the Stormfoot Catacombs, a place that would teach her a very painful lesson about Elden Ring's true nature.
Uh-oh, fresh haircut, Amber alert. Somebody call the handsome police. As we begin day 2, Amy mentions it's been a few days of real life time since her last session and that she's forgotten all the controls. I'm sure that won't be a problem at all. Attempt 1 is the classic surprise bitch jump scare by a hidden enemy. This time it's the 2 Gargies lurking in the corners. They shred her instantly. Amy's response was, that was terrifying and I forgot this game sucks. On her second attempt, she inches around the corner so carefully, only to die even faster. Admittedly, that little rock goblin did go sicko mode and attacked her with the fury of 1,000 suns, so kind of understandable. Amy then asked, how many times can you die in this game before you're dead forever? I said, I'm not telling. But it's less than you'd think. The notion that a video game would delete your character if you die too much and also not tell you how many lives you have is completely psychotic. It is a mechanic in some game genres, of course, but Amy doesn't know what genre she's playing or what the differences might be, so she thought permadeath was a real possibility. On her third attempt, the Gargo once again decimates her. She says, what's the point of having a sword if I'm too slow to do anything? I responded, oh, are all your attacks too slow? She experiments with a few different attack patterns, trying to pay attention to their speed, and it's not obvious to her which attacks are slow and which ones are fast. On attempt 5, it's very sloppy, but Amy does finally kill both Gargs in the first room. She doesn't notice that her health bar is at 1% though. Then she interacts with a door that says, locked by some contraption. She has trouble reading the text because it's too small from where we're sitting in the room, and also she doesn't know you have to press triangle to close the pop-up before you can actually attack again. What's weird is that the banner isn't labeled with a dismiss button anywhere. It's video game logic to know the same button you used for interact is probably the same button for dismiss. This is surprising though, because for other pop-ups in Elden Ring, they do have dismiss labeled. Like when you find a new weapon, it literally says press triangle for okay. IDK, game dev seems hard. It doesn't matter in this instance though, because one hit vaporizes her, but if she had full health and was locked out of attacking, she would have been so pissed. On attempt 6, she runs past the initial room without fighting the gargoyles, which is a first for her. She goes to war with the 2 gargies in the main room and manages to take them both out. It is very messy though, mostly because she's just spamming light attack over and over. Plus she isn't locking on, so is struggling to keep them in view and actually land attacks. Moving forward, Amy cautiously approaches the fire trap and spends a long time studying it. She figures she'll have to sprint, so asks me, am I moving fast? What's the button again? I say, why don't you test out your movement and see if you can remember? So she tries a few buttons and does eventually figure it out. On her first attempt, she nails the insanely tight window for the first corridor, which I was not expecting. Unfortunately, she turned a bit too early at the second trap, runs into the wall, panics, runs back out, and gets cooked. On attempt 8, she makes it back to the fire trap and nails the second corridor. She even runs through the fire quite early. It looked like it should have burned her, but maybe she's a hitbox god. What do I know? Animations are tricky. Being jumped one too many times, she's very suspicious after climbing the ladder and manages to see the gargo that's very close to the blind corner. Pretty galaxy brain until she spams light attack right off the edge after him. And wouldn't you know, accidentally performs her first heal of the day, so task failed successfully. Unfortunately, this means Amy has to do the fire trap again and tragically misses the timing. Upon dying, she has to take a minute for an emotional reset because she's very disappointed. The euphoria from beating the fire to erasing that progress with an unforced error was brutal. And I would know because my life is a series of unforced errors. By attempt 9, Amy still hasn't figured out that she can just run past the enemies. Even though she's been doing that with the first room, she hasn't connected that she can do it in the second room. So she enters the main room and waits for the first Gargi to drop down and fight her. Meanwhile, the ranged attacks from upstairs ravage her health bar, and she shows no sign of comprehending that fact, based on the way she didn't take cover literally at all. While sprinting to collect her runes, Amy accidentally runs through the room without fighting anything. It seems like that was her first actual light bulb moment to think, wait a second, why am I fighting these guys? Because sure enough, for every subsequent attempt, she sprints straight through that main room without waiting for a fight. And that's cash money. A few attempts later, Amy notices her low health and does her first intentional heal. This is huge, and doctors worldwide are drinking champagne and doing meth. After taking a few more hits and going back to low health, she realizes she can just heal again. And that was how she discovered she had more than 1 health flask. A few attempts later, after killing the goblin who chased her, she finds a forked hatchet and makes no attempt to even check if it's an upgrade. Doesn't care at all. Then after dying like 10 more times and making no additional progress, Amy is getting visibly distressed and frustrated. I feel bad, so I tell her, look, this catacomb is actually completely optional. You don't have to keep doing this. She immediately turns around, runs out, and says, I never want to see that place again. Me on my last day of school. Amy kills a pack of zombies to cool off and asks me, what are the swirly things when I kill stuff? I say, oh, those are runes. She replied, what are runes? I say, that's a really good question, but this isn't Wikipedia. I'm not just gonna tell her the answer. And also I don't know. She stumbles into the Groveside cave and grabs the side of grace, but doesn't rest at it, even though her health is low. I don't think she realizes those are separate actions yet. Then it's back to her favorite pastime, picking a bunch of fruit and flowers. I think she loves this because it's just so much less stressful than combat. Why go to war when growing garden is available? At the Gatefront ruins, she saw something on the ground, pulls up the map and places a marker on it, then sprints in and grabs the map fragment. I have no idea how she knew to do this. Obviously, she gets swarmed by the guards, and despite kind of popping off here, says to me, Destiny was so easy. This is not easy. This game is so discouraging. True. When she respawns and checks the map, she decides she wants to head uphill toward the castle. A surprisingly poignant navigational move. Heading through Stormgate, she encounters the giant troll for the first time. This is the biggest enemy she's ever seen at this point, and says, what am I supposed to do? I'm little. He's too big for me to kill. As gamers, we know he's actually less deadly than the Tree Sentinel because he's not a unique named boss with a lower third health bar on our HUD. But Amy doesn't instinctively know the difference between a minor enemy and a boss if they're both big in stature. On her second attempt through the gate, she finds out the hard way where the actual spawn point is for the troll. Who among us hasn't been baited by some tantalizing loot? She doesn't give up though, sprinting for her life, pulling off a clutch heal that I was surprised she remembered how to do, and eventually escaping the troll. She grabs a golden seed on the way past and then gets ambushed by the wolves. In her panic, she runs right next to a side of grace without seeing it, reaches the next garrison of guards, and learns in real time the creative power of a ballista. On her third attempt, she tries to disrespect the troll and pays the price. You might not know the shockwave, but the shockwave knows you. It's kind of like Russia. Somehow she manages to run through everyone again. When the wolves spawn this time, she veers to the right and gets very close to the side of Grace, but still doesn't notice it. While trying to pillage the dog corpse, she accidentally starts a lengthy dialogue with Red Riding Hood. And during that conversation, the rest of the wolves catch up and maul her. It's only during the death cam that she notices the nearby Grace for the first time. She was like, what? How long has that been there? I was like, kind of the whole time. On attempt 4, she narrowly avoids the troll's shockwave, and to be honest, I think she just got really lucky here. Then runs up the hill and goes straight to the side of Grace. Even though the wolves instantly kill her, she got the checkpoint and respawns right there. That is progress, baby. Capitalism at its finest. As we wrap up the session, she says, "This game is so hard and it makes you feel like a bad person." And I said, "That's because you are." She didn't like that.
Amy was starting to understand the world of Elden Ring, but soon she would come face to face with her greatest challenge yet and the secret objective of this entire video.
At the start of day 3, Amy discovers some bats. So far, her combat style is basically just don't lock on, spam light attack, and occasionally jump attack. Also, because she still doesn't notice her own health bar, she will frequently re-enter combat with 1% health and not a care in the world. I also noticed that while she was fighting these bats, that she's struggling with depth perception a bit. She can't quite tell how far away something is or how far her attacks can reach. While exploring, Amy sees her first dung beetle and actually manages to kill it before the time runs out. She finds an Ash of War, which prompts a big pop-up called adding skills. Listen to the amount of buzzwords in the first sentence. With a whetstone knife, you can use Ashes of War to grant your armaments new skills at sites of grace. So you need to know what a whetstone knife is, she doesn't. You need to know what an Ash of War is, she doesn't. You need to know what a skill is, she doesn't. And you need to know what an armament is, she barely does. Sites of grace are the only thing Amy definitely knows in that one sentence. The amount of assumed knowledge adds up quick. When this popped up, she literally said, "What is all this gibberish?" As if that's not enough, there's a second page telling her all about affinities. Let's just say, poopy in my butt. After another gentle embrace from the ballista, she makes her way up the path into the castle. Amy's getting decent at running through the enemies. We're only on day 3, but she's made her way to the first boss without even realizing. This is a testament to Elden Ring's intuitive world design. Even a non-gamer like Amy got gently sucked into the marketing funnel straight to Margit's OnlyFans, just as Miyazaki intended. Amy summons Roger because she loves having a friend, and little did she know we were approaching the secret goal of the entire video. I'll be honest, I didn't have high hopes for her at this stage, but you never know. Attempt 1 went just about how you'd expect though. She lands a few light attacks, but as soon as Amy saw his health bar and how little damage she'd done, asked me, why is he not even dying at all? I don't think she was ready for the idea that some enemies are just gonna have like 20 times the amount of health that regular enemies have. Basically, even the concept of a giga boss enemy was kind of new to her. Attempt 2 was mostly her staying back and letting Roger do a bunch of damage. She did run away and try to heal herself though, which is an improvement. When attempt 2 failed, she said, "I'll never be able to kill him, and there's too many buttons to even press." We were a long way off. She hasn't even grasped the concept of dodging enemy attacks yet. I'm starting to think my goal might be too ambitious. She attempts Margit one more time, does 0 damage, dies, and immediately gives up to go somewhere else. At least this time, she remembered that she could just walk away. Back outside, Amy kills a few guards and gets some Godric soldier gauntlets to drop. For some reason, she instantly goes into her menu to equip them. I think the idea that she could change her outfit slightly got her kind of excited. Women and outfits, am I right? Eventually, she finds the gloves in the menu, but then starts to explore her loadout a little bit. She goes into her weapons and realizes there's a new one that's not one of her original swords. While toggling back and forth between the scimitar and the hatchet, she's trying to comprehend the wall of numbers on the right-hand side. She says to me, "So one is red and one is not? What's the difference?" Also, there's way too much writing on the screen. As gamers, we know red text probably means bad or downgrade, but poor Amy has no chance with these stats. Also, while dicking around, she accidentally unequipped the scimitar, so when she exited the menu, she only had one sword out. The guards kill her, and she says, "I thought this game was supposed to be fun. Maybe it's only for advanced people." Amy still has no clue that this genre is famous for being difficult, but she was starting to think maybe this game is for advanced people only. Big dick daddy gamers like you and I. When she respawned, I did take a bit of pity on her and asked, "Oh, where did your other sword go?" That prompted her to go back into the menu and re-equip it. At least she knew she was supposed to have both swords out. Trying to explore the nearby area, she gets killed a few times by all the guards, which I can tell is starting to frustrate her. After the 5th death in a row, Amy says, "It doesn't seem fair. They are are just so much faster than me. What she doesn't understand is that if you're surrounded by multiple enemies, it's much harder to fight your way out. They'll spam attack you and stagger you, and there's no time to heal. Us gamers know that many enemy bad, and crowd control very important. Now, I don't know what prompted this, but suddenly out of frustration from the guards ganking her, she brings up the map and just fast travels away. I guess she remembered that fast travel was a mechanic in Destiny. I had no idea she knew how to do this. She makes her way up the hill and properly enters the Church of El for the first time. When she grabs the grace, wouldn't you know, that's when the game hits her with the fast travel explanation. This is like telling your son about condoms after he's already impregnated that girl. Amy rests and Melina appears to give her the spectral steed whistle. Melina tells us again that we're maidenless, and Amy says, "When will I find myself a maiden?" And I said, spoken like a true incel. Amy notices the level up option in the menu but doesn't have enough runes to use it. Then the horseback riding pop-up appears, followed by the pouches pop-up. The game is clearly trying to tie these two things together. It's basically saying you should assign the spectral steed whistle to a pouch for quick access. But it only implies this. It doesn't explicitly tell you to do it. To Amy's credit, she finds the pouches in the menu and even equips the whistle. But when looking at the pouches menu overall, the button prompt only says up on the D-pad. So Amy doesn't realize it's actually triangle plus up. She spends literally the next 10 minutes trying to figure out how to use the whistle. She presses every button combination except triangle up. She even checks the controller layout menu, but there's no mention of pouches anywhere. I feel like she was doing everything right here and the game just let her down. Yes, the initial pouches explanation had triangle plus D-pad listed, but if you don't read that or don't remember it, you're out of luck, I guess. Of course, technically we could just Google it, but what are we? Pussy little bitches?
So after an hour, she ends the session feeling pretty confused and frustrated. 3 days in, and Elden Ring was really wearing her down. What she didn't know was that she was about to enter her training arc.
Amy gets invited to the round table hold by Melina. Right away, she talks to Raggy McBlindface, who asks, "Do you still see it? The guidance of grace?" Amy says to me, "I don't know what the guidance of grace is. Is it here right now?" It made me chuckle when she actively spun the camera around in-game trying to look for it. I'm pretty sure it's the giant golden beam coming up from the table, but I don't think that stood out to Amy because in a fantasy game, everything looks weird. She does some exploring and eventually makes her way to the blacksmith Barnacle Boy. When she tried to strengthen her sword and realized she doesn't have enough smithing stones, I was like, now you're really playing Elden Ring. Half the game is trying to find enough smithing stones to upgrade your weapon. She clicks on Ashes of War, and this is now the second time she's learned all about them, but it's still a total word vomit salad to her. It might as well be the crayon drawings of a 1-year-old for all she could understand. Her only comment was, "This seems very complex." She heads downstairs and really wants to go through the fog wall, but doesn't understand why it's locked. Very briefly, as she's turning around, she gets the little examine prompt. As gamers, when we see a locked door like this with an obvious little statue in front of it, we know the statue will probably unlock the door somehow. That's gamer lockpicking 101. But Amy doesn't have that instinct, so she doesn't even contemplate that there is a way to get through. Upstairs, she speaks to Fia, and when Fia requests to hold her, Amy asked me, "Is she trying to sleep with me?" I said, "I can't speak for Fia, but I know I am." Anyway, to my great surprise, she clicked yes, you may help me. After a moment, Amy said, "Well, this is a weird hug." And I was like, yeah, that's kind of the game away. After some more explanation, Amy leapt from the balcony into the one-way arena trap of Mad Tongue Albert. She gets the pop-up that says invaded, but doesn't know what that means really, so is very casual about it. Right up until the demon-looking spirit wizard decimates her. Amy drops 450 runes on the ground and strongly desires to get them back. She doesn't have a good gauge of what's a lot of runes yet, so thinks 450 is a small fortune. She drops down, grabs the runes, and immediately tries to fast travel out of there. That's when she learns the hard way that in certain areas, no quick travale. Amy respawns, opens the menu, and asks, "Wait, can I fast travel from here or not?" She checks and says, "Yeah, I can definitely fast travel." So then she jumps back down, thinking there must have been some kind of mistake, and wouldn't you know it, once again, no Inglés. She doesn't make the connection that from this specific area of the round table, you cannot teleport. Seeing how little damage she did to Albert and how quickly he killed her was very deflating. She immediately rage quits the round table hold and fast travels back to the Church of El. At the Church of El, Amy meets Rani for the first time. It gives her something that could be extremely helpful to her playthrough, the Spirit Calling Bell. The game gives her a big pop-up called Summoning Spirits, but it's not clear how insanely helpful summons are. Amy really needed a big neon sign saying, "This will make every battle way easier." Unfortunately, she completely misses this mechanic. Oh, something that made me giggle is that Amy just didn't care about talking to Rani at all. So Rani's sitting there ready to chat and Amy's like, "All right, bye," and just walks off. As she's heading into the forest, Rani says, "Oh, I still had other stuff to say, but all good." Amy goes, "Is she still talking? What does she want?" And I was like, damn, no respect for the queen. You hate to see that. That little fun interaction aside, Amy was an effing sad girl after struggling so much against the invader, and she just felt like she'd hit a brick wall with the game at this point. To be honest, this is where the video should have ended because her desire to continue was gone. This was it. She was like, I'm like, can I be done with this? Like, what are we doing? Do you have enough? And I was like, this was my thinking. Ideally, I didn't want to have to tell her anything about the game, but if I don't help her at all here, I literally don't have a video. And I really wanted her to get back to Margit and have her Cinderella moment. So this is where we cue our Rocky Balboa training montage. Firstly, I said, you're missing several crucial mechanics in the game. To start with, you're not locking onto enemies, so go over to this guard and practice locking on. Secondly, you're not even dodging attacks. Rolling through an attack and then punishing an enemy in that window is like 80%, maybe 90% of the combat. I explained the difference between backstepping and dodge rolling. She practiced on a few guards until she felt a bit more comfortable. Then it was time for jump attacks. I said a jumping heavy attack is your best friend because it closes the gap and does heaps of damage. So she tried that for a while. At one point, I kind of giggled. Amy saw a glowing skull on the ground and spent several minutes trying to break it. She tried stepping on it and hitting it, but just couldn't figure it out. Eventually she gave up and moved on. Then I told her it's time to just two-hand one sword because she wasn't getting any use out of the dual wield attack, so she was throwing damage away. When resting at a grace, she tried to level up again, but didn't have enough runes, so went to a nearby merchant and sold just enough roa fruits, exactly 6, to secure a level up. I told her just put the point into dexterity because I don't want you wasting a level up on a random stat that's not gonna help. So now that I told her about the essential mechanics, she spent another hour just wandering around Limgrave, dodging attacks, locking onto enemies, and picking fights with random guys to practice. At some point, she found another smithing stone, so I told her to go upgrade the sword. I know it's not ideal to help this much, but don't worry, there is still a brutal amount of struggle on the horizon for Amy.
Because yes, she had finally started to really play Elden Ring, but now it was time to see if it would make any difference against an actual boss.
At the start of day 5, she comes across a merchant sitting on the ground who says, "Please buy something. I've been hungry so long, please." Laying it on quite thick, so she feels bad and says, "All right, well, I'll buy something to give him some money." So she buys a smithing stone and the merchant doesn't even acknowledge her purchase. Amy goes, "He didn't even say thank you. That's so rude and weird. He can't have been that hungry." I'm like, "You're 100% right. We should kill this guy." And she's like, "No, that's too mean." And I was like, okay. While exploring for materials, Amy finds a ruin fragment on the ground and asks me, "What does this thing do? Do you eat it?" I replied, "I don't know, maybe." So she opens her inventory, checks every single page to locate it, uses one, and her character just chucks it. And she says, "Oh, so you just throw it?" I was not expecting such a thorough investigation when I didn't answer the question. Where was this energy when she found a new weapon or was learning combat mechanics? Am I right? Eventually, Amy stumbles into the Groveside cave, kills all the wolves, and starts exploring. At one point, she spams jump while asking, why can't I get back up? First of all, that ledge is too high. And second, there's a ramp she could walk up literally right next to where she's standing, just on the other side of the pillar. Lol. Further in, the cave leads to a fog wall. This is her first boss fight since Margit, and her first attempt at a boss she can realistically defeat if she perseveres. The Beast Man of Fire Missoula. I don't have a funny name. The Beast Man of my tiny nuts. On attempt 1, Amy goes into maximum panic. She completely forgets to lock on and check her health. She gets the boss down to about 70% HP though, and her light attacks are doing decent damage. I tell her, you can definitely do this. While heading back for attempt 2, she notices the ramp leading down from the entrance that she missed earlier. Her only comment was, "I feel dumb." I say, don't worry, we've all missed very obvious paths in this game. I promise you that. For attempt number 2, she locks on right away, but mostly just spams dodge roll. Surprisingly, this works pretty well though, and she gets some good hits in. Amy remembers to heal after taking damage and uses all of her health flasks. I don't know if she's even ever done that yet until now. By spamming and persevering, she actually gets the boss down to about 25% health. This is big boy progress. Heading back for attempt 3, I notice she's just casually casually walking the entire time. Most gamers try to bind forward, back, left, and right, all to sprint. If we aren't sprinting, we're losing and pissing. Amy's perfectly happy just plodding along at her own pace, I guess. On attempt 3, she accidentally gets a backstab off on the boss and has no idea how she did that. This attempt wasn't as good. She gets the boss to about 40% health. Attempt 4 is more of the same, gets the boss to about 50% health. On the way to attempt 5, something unexpected happens. She kills the first wolf as usual, but this time it also alerts a nearby wolf, even though that's never happened until now. So while she's shuffling along toward the fog wall in a trance, I guess, just walking like a total normie, the second wolf jump scares her from behind. God, this game will keep you on your toes, and I love that. For attempt 5, she actually remembers to use jump attacks, and this allows her to get a cheeky stagger off on the boss. She was more aggressive on this run, spamming her attacks and actually getting the boss to sub 20% health. But hey, it's classic Elden Ring ego creep. Her increased aggression then causes her to die very quickly on attempt 6. Attempts 7 through 11 see her bouncing between 55 and 20% health remaining on the boss. She's slowly figuring out the encounter. On attempt 12, she's careful, methodical, and deliberate. She chains 4 light attacks in a row, bringing the boss to 1% HP. But while trying to roll away to heal, she backs herself into the corner of the cave and has nowhere to go. The boss closes the distance and kills her mercilessly. Amy's disappointed and says, I wanted to kill him because I'm fatiguing. Asked her what she meant, and she said, it's getting harder and harder every time because my brain and fingies are tired and I know I'm doing worse. She added, I think my lips are sore because I've been biting them when I'm focused. On attempt 14, she opens with a jump attack, follows with a 3-hit light attack combo, and punishes the boss during its screech animation. She notices that after certain big moves, the boss seems to be vulnerable for a little bit longer, which excites her. In that excitement, she accidentally hits the crouch button and crab walks towards the boss. Despite missing one punish window, she gets several good dodges at the last possible frame. She doesn't back off, keeps rolling, and lands small punishes. This eventually leads to a textbook kill on the Beastman. It's a big celebration moment. She earns 1,000 runes, which feels like 1 million to her. She wants to level up immediately to avoid losing them, so she sits at the grace, but then she changes her mind and starts heading out of the cave. I was like, oh, where are you going? I thought you wanted to level up. She says, oh, I thought I could only level up at the church. She'd been leveling at the Church of El every time and thought that was the only spot you could do it. I was like, no, you can level up at any grace. It's funny how normies make random little associations like that. For the next 15 minutes, she runs around the little forest, killing guards, picking up materials, and seems very content. I asked her, so what are you doing here? Like, what's the goal? And she said, I'm just getting some ground treats. I like to sell them to get fun stuff for myself. She really enjoys selling just enough materials to get the next level up. Amy hates the idea of losing runes, so she always levels up the second she can afford it. Even if she only has a few $100s, her anxiety skyrockets. Then Amy said to me, I don't know, I just like this little forest. At this point, she's basically turned Elden Ring into Breath of the Wild without realizing it.
After 5 days of struggle, Amy had finally claimed a victory. But on day 6, she would discover just how little she actually knew.
Amy starts day 6 after a break of a few days IRL, so she's forgotten most of the controls again. Also, I couldn't help but notice that she's completely fearless when it comes to jumping off ledges. At the start of the session, she leaps into the swamp and goes, this game is broken. You don't die when you do a big fall. I should at least break an ankle. Medical professionals have the least immersion. Amy wanders a little too far into the swamp and summons a red eyes black dragon. She panics and locks onto random enemies in the background. Fueled by adrenaline, she instantly remembers how to sprint though, which is convenient. While running away, she falls into a classic Elden Ring trap, engaging a small group of enemies only for several more to suddenly join the battle. When the skeletons kill her, she says, I don't like the swamp. It's a bit scary, actually. She tentatively ventures back into the swamp to grab her 248 runes, only to get invaded and die a minute later. I also noticed when she respawns really far away, she's walking a great distance on foot. Either she's forgotten about Torrent or doesn't mind spending 5x the amount of time to get somewhere. It couldn't be me though. To prove that she really had forgotten the controls, when approaching a group of guards, instead of attacking, she just mashes her face into them, and they didn't seem to like like that, and killed her instantly. Amy goes, oops, I forgot how to attack. After respawning, she grabs her runes from the guards, but barely escapes without being stun locked. After a few seconds of sprinting away, she returns to a casual stroll. But just because you've turned around doesn't mean an enemy isn't still trying to kill you, right? The guard obviously catches up and reminds her of this mechanic. Intrigued by the riverbed below, Amy wants to explore it, but doesn't want to walk all the way down and around. And because she has yet to die from fall damage, she arrogantly assumes she can survive any jump distance. She doesn't just walk off the edge, she soars like Michael Jordan going for a dunk. To my amazement, she effing lives too. I could not believe that. When will she accidentally kill herself? Within seconds, Amy spots another glowing skull on the ground and spends several minutes trying to crack it with her sword. She hasn't quite grasped the concept of hitboxes yet. You know, a gamer would probably notice the sword's strike is too high and the skull is low. We try to crouch or hit lower somehow. After some trial and error, she gets lucky and actually connects with the skull. She was debatably more happy about this than killing the Beastman earlier. So make of that what you will. While wandering around the swamp's outskirts, she comes across a giant crab and says, oh no, he's way too big for me. But Amy sticks with it and eventually defeats Kingler from the Kanto region. Afterwards, she asked me, why is there so much big, nasty stuff in this swamp? Hey, I ask myself the same thing every time I take off my underwear. A bit later, Amy notices a spirit spring in the distance and said, quote, there's another puff over there. She calls the spirit springs puffs, which is scientifically irrefutable. She's used one before, but doesn't quite remember how it worked. So when she finally gets there, she's pretty thrilled to avoid some fall damage. She leaps into the updraft while not on torrent and plummets. She goes, oh, do I have to be on my horsey for that? I'm like, yeah, but despite this horse talk, she continues exploring on foot, running all the way to the southern edge of the map without summoning torrent once. IDK. An unusual tactic she deployed was running in a straight line toward the giant archer firing car-sized arrows at her. It's not like this was a surprise attack. She saw the arrows near her feet multiple times. She didn't even react to this incident. I mean, what a Rubik's Cube of a mind. So Amy decides to scale the cliffs instead. After mashing jump into what looks to her a very scalable ledge, she comments, I'm not very good at climbing, am I? To her credit, jumping in Elden Ring is pretty goofy and some things look easily scalable that aren't. Maybe this is why all those other games add yellow paint to the climbable terrain. Am I getting yellow paint pilled right now? Say it ain't so. Amy makes her way down to the beach and stumbles onto a pack of dogs who chase her. As one of the dogs lunges, she accidentally crouches instead of sprinting. This is when I realize her muscle memory from playing Destiny 2 is kicking in. In D2, sprinting was mapped to L3, but in Elden Ring, crouching is mapped to L3. She's just trying to sprint away, which is unlucky because crouching mid-combat is guaranteed to get you killed. Later, Amy comes across a stone hut and is quite surprised she can't cut her way through this flimsy wooden door. She asks, why can't my sword cut through this timber? I had no answer, but God, how is she wrong though? It makes no sense. Gamers would recognize this as a non-explorable set dressing building, but when did our standards drop so low, huh? It's time we woke up. She finally meets her match by jumping off a cliff that actually kills her. This was quite satisfying for me to see. She couldn't believe it and tried one more time, thinking if she just inches off more carefully, she'll survive. But no. It's nice to see gravity finally pulling its weight around here. That's a little physics joke for the nerds. Shout out. At this point, I had to ask, hey, why aren't you using your horse? She said, I don't want him to die. I'm sacrificing my life for his because what if he can't respawn? I was like, oh, you think that if the horse dies, you'll lose him forever? Didn't see that coming. I can't watch her walk for the rest of this playthrough, so I explained that it's fine if Torrent dies, he can respawn. She says, oh good, okay, cool. She vaguely remembered the pop-up when she first got Torrent that mentions the horse dying and assumed that meant that Torrent could permanently die somehow. Very few things in video games result in permanent loss, and it's surprisingly hard to convey that to a normie.
With every step, Amy was getting better. But the next place she explored was going to be extremely unforgiving, and she was about to learn that some bosses are much harder than others.
Day 7 begins with Amy galloping on Torrent. She's trying to hit some sheep with her sword, but struggles because she only knows how to swing on the right-hand side because she's used to pressing just R1 for light attack. Technically, you can also swing on the left-hand side, but that's such a subtle mechanic, I didn't bother mentioning it. Who among us hasn't struggled to hit something while riding Torrent? Later, Amy encounters a group of bats. She kills 2 after missing 100 more swings from Torrent, but becomes so laser focused on the 3rd, she completely forgets to check her health. Old habits die hard. And after all, the bat is 1 hit from death. What could possibly go wrong? Welcome to Flying Enemies, you grounded baby. Despite having 4 health flasks remaining and plenty of time to heal, Amy dies. She decides she wants some revenge on the giant archer golem from earlier. Even though she knows how much damage his arrows can do, she casually walks toward him again. This works actually. The Giga arrow leaves her at what must be 1 literal HP. Despite gobbling that arrow like it's my huge breakfast that I made her, Amy does pretty well against the golem. She tanks multiple stomps to the body while barely attempting to roll, and despite cutting it pretty close, she eventually triumphs. So, touch my penis? Satisfied with her revenge, Amy heads into Castle Morn to explore. Upon seeing all the enemies in the courtyard, she tries summoning Torrent multiple times, confused as to why her magical horse won't appear. It's because Mum said no riding the horse inside. On her first attempt through the courtyard, she runs in a giant circle, aggroing every possible enemy. Spoiler alert, she dies. After respawning, she walks forward straight off the elevator shaft, learning the hard way that in Elden Ring, elevator also want to kill you. After riding it up, she tries to pull the lever to send it back down. Pull the lever crunk. The urge runs so deep. When that doesn't work, she notices the button in the middle and sends it back down successfully and conquers the vertical traversal. Much quicker than I thought too. Okay, nose is itchy, just did a line of cocaine. Further into the castle, she falls down a gap and accidentally corners herself in a tiny alleyway with 2 slime enemies. She freaks out, forgets to lock on, and repeatedly hits the walls and ground instead of the enemies. She barely survives, forgets to heal, only to enter the next room where another slime drops from above and Assassin Creeds her ass. Nickelodeon just called to say, congratulations, you've been slimed. She then dies several times to the psycho barnacle dog near the fireplace, but slowly optimizes her run back each time. Eventually, she gets overconfident, leaps off the top of a wall at full speed, and lands directly on top of one of the mobs. It did not appreciate the rude interruption and ravages her beehole. When I asked her what she was thinking, she said, I thought it would just be faster to jump down from the top. This is why the saying, look before you leap, remains undefeated. Our ancestors were right as usual. Amy soon learns that she needs to somehow get down to the roof below. On her first attempt, she doesn't even consider jumping and casually walks to her death. On the second attempt, she makes it a little further, but when needing to jump from this rock platform to the tree below, she just assumes she'll make it without even checking the gap and somehow lands on the very edge, completely undeserved, and she just goes, whoops. And I was like, ah. Toward the very bottom of the castle, she comes across a barnacle dog and a ladder. When Amy tried to escape by climbing down the ladder, because of how she had the camera, her character accidentally climbs straight back up instead of descending. Then when she does climb down, the dog literally plummets straight past to meet her at the bottom. When she comically just starts climbing back up, I laughed so hard. It looked like a comedy skit. Unfortunately, the flying enemy at the top goes crazy though, and Amy stood no chance. So that's a guardian down. The next attempt is a little better. Rather than just climbing down the ladder, Amy just launches herself off to save time. The barnacle dog doesn't give up though, and while fleeing along the shoreline without noticing its edge, Amy walks straight into the open ocean. No swim, only splash in Elden Ring. New plan. Amy completely avoids the annoying dog and stumbles her way down to the fog wall. Her first boss in a while, Leonardo Miss DiCaprio, who absolutely destroys Amy 6 times in a row, usually within seconds. Despite the very short distance to get back to the fog wall, Amy says, all this running to get back there is a bit annoying, isn't it? I replied, you don't know how good you've got it right now. After repeatedly failing to deal more than like 5% of his health bar, Amy gives up on Leonardo, knowing she's not even close to defeating him. I think that was a good strategic call. She understandably fast travels back to the Weeping Peninsula, remembering she'd been there the other day. While fighting the bridge guardian, she gets a little too excited and panic rolls right off the bridge mid-combat. On her second attempt, she's more careful until she nearly strafes off the cliff in the exact same spot. Hey, the same mistake multiple times in a row is my preferred way to learn a thing. Have you ever killed a guy so hard it opens the map menu prematurely? Only real gamers have that kind of prowess.
Today's boss had humbled her, but soon she'd find some things that might just change everything.
We're going to quickly go through day 8, 9, and 10 because not a lot happens here. So day 8 marks a significant weapon upgrade for Amy, which begins with the death-touched catacombs. She makes it all the way to the boss room and notices her health is low right as she's crossing the fog wall. So she tries to heal herself, but what she doesn't know is that she's on the wrong flask. After taking a few steps into the room, she tries one more time to heal, thinking she must have missed the button or something. Now she's definitely sure that she healed successfully, so approaches the Black Knife assassin, who kills her in 2 hits. Right as the "you died" text fades, she toggles onto the correct flask and says, "Oh, wrong one." A pretty astute observation. This Elden baby is growing. After exploring a little further, she discovers the Uchi Katana, but instead of walking off the ledge straight back to the entrance, which is right there, she chooses to run back through the entire dungeon. The idea of having to manually backtrack to the surface is completely bonkers to your average gamer. Anyway, she equips the katana, completing her transformation into a full-blown dexterity degen. The game prompts her to wield the weapon with both hands because she doesn't quite meet the required 11 strength. And to her credit, she successfully does this right away. Amy then spends some time in an open field trying out the katana's moves. While experimenting, she discovers the unsheath ability, the katana's default Ash of War. She also notices it costs FP to use, the blue bar, for the first time grasping the idea that this is probably a special, slightly more powerful attack. So slow and steady improvements, and that's basically all that happens on day 8, except near the end of the session while riding around on Torrent, 2 dinky guards ambush her with daggers, going absolutely sicko mode. They kill Torrent and knock Amy to the ground. She barely manages to roll away. Her strategy is to just sprint for a bit and then get back on Torrent to escape. In the heat of the moment, she fat fingers one of the other empty pouches, which allows the guards to catch up. Then when she actually summons Torrent, they do the exact same thing, but this time there's no rolling away to safety. A string of errors causing you to die to minor enemies is one of my favorite things about Elden Ring. Amy disagreed. On day 9, Amy revisits Castle Morn, determined to get to the end. On attempt number 1, she struggles with the archer birds on the 2nd level and gets machine gunned down. On attempt 2, she tries to sprint past all the enemies at the start, but slightly overshoots the ladder, getting staggered and pinned in the corner by the dogs. On subsequent attempts, frustration builds as the dogs are repeatedly strafing and dodging her attacks. On attempt 4, she makes it back to the 2nd level, but in the heat of the moment, rolls straight off the bridge. This works, actually. Not only does she survive, it resets the aggro of the flying enemies, so she's able to come back and kill them easier. There's one more group of enemies standing between her and the end of the castle. Amy stands there, observing them for a long time, trying to decide what to do. In the end, while waiting for them to kill each other, one of the flying guys spots her and comes over, which draws the attention of the entire group. It was a pretty good plan to try and isolate one enemy at a time, but unfortunately, these morons are paying more attention than you would think. By this point, Amy is emotionally frustrated, and her next few attempts go pretty poorly, mostly just dying to the first group of dogs over and over, so we end the session there. Amy starts day 10 exploring Limgrave and notices some giant steps leading down a cliff. I have been waiting for her to see something like this, and she did not disappoint. Right away, the big dragonfly spooked her, causing her to blindly run and jump off the edge. She gets insanely lucky, landing on a stone she has no idea was there. Still panicking though, she jumps again immediately after landing and barely makes another jump she should have missed. "What's it like to be God's favorite person?" I asked her, which received 1 eye roll. She keeps descending, and after killing the next dragonfly is met with an ultra tight drop. She spends several minutes spinning the camera at every possible angle to investigate her next move, and decides to attempt a slow, precise walk-off instead of jumping down. She inches so close to the edge that it looks like her character is floating, and I thought she'd somehow glitched inside the rock or something. Nope. Just some insane precision as she successfully lands below. Is that dragonfly dead? Yes, it is. Had to double check. A little while later, Amy discovers the Flask of Wondrous Physic. But as usual, the pop-up explanation is vague and confusing. Then while toggling through her flasks, she accidentally unequips her weapon and spends time riding around unarmed, which led to her punching a boar while riding past. That was so masculine, I thought I was watching one of my own Manscaped ads. While exploring a nearby graveyard, she kept accidentally jumping over graves while trying to grab the items. Kind of annoyed, she asked me, "Why is it so hard to move around and do the things I want to do?" I was like, hey, Elden Ring's tricky like that. After farming a giant troll outside the church several times and earning a few thousand runes, Amy said, "I wish I could store my monies. That would make it a little bit nicer for me, I think." Sitting at the Murkwater catacomb side of Grace, she notices a glowing icon next to the Mix Wondrous Physic option, which prompted her to explore that mechanic. She ended up adding her first crystal Tears, Crimson, which gives health back, and the Strength Knot, which gives, and you're not going to believe this, Dexterity. No, it's strength. Then when Amy stands up from the grace, she toggles between her flasks, taking note of where the physic is. I did not expect her to figure this mechanic out, but F me, I guess. Amy ends the day by stumbling into Caelid, heads into the smoldering church, grabs the side of grace, and is ambushed and killed by Anastasia. The last thing she did was look for materials by a minor Erd tree, and that's when she discovered just how responsive Torrent can be. After standing completely still while picking up a faded Erdleaf flower, she accidentally... I still giggle once a week thinking about this moment. Needless to say, that was the end of day 10.
Amy's confidence was growing, but would she be ready for the biggest battle of her gaming career and the main objective of this entire video? I wasn't sure. Before we could go back to Margit, she had one final place to conquer.
At the start of day 11, before I can even hit record, Amy launches herself straight off a cliff on Torrent. As soon as she died, she was like, oh, I forgot I'm in the cringe red place. What a scathing and poignant review of Caelid. She's right though, it is a demonic wasteland where everything has hemorrhoids, and it's like, big whoop, we all have that. She fast travels back to Castle Morn, determined to reach the end. The first few attempts all end the same way because she keeps trying to kill the dogs at the start so they won't chase her up the ladder. But crowd control is just not her specialty. The dog keeps overwhelming and spamming her to death. This feels like a big regression to Amy, and after dying several times, I can tell she's pretty bummed about it. She explained, "It makes me feel so stupid, it's not uplifting. What's the point of a game that tears your morale down like this?" Despite only being 6 minutes into the session, we take a quick break to reset emotionally. When we return, her new strategy is to sprint past the dogs and hope for the best. This works, but now we're back to the pesky trio on the bridge. Amy inches forward, trying to aggro just the grounded Misbegotten, but he ignores her, and instead both flying enemies rush forward, which in turn causes the ground guy to charge, but with a slight delay. And that's more annoying actually. While flustered, Amy struggles to switch lock targets from the flying unit to the closer guy so all her attacks miss, while he stabs her in the back repeatedly. Something as simple as unlocking your target and dodge rolling back a few times to regroup is second nature to a gamer, but in the heat of the moment, it's quite difficult for Amy. A few attempts later, she makes it back to the bridge enemies. New strategy. This time, she rushes the grounded Misbegotten and bursts him down like her life depends on it. Perfect. Everything's going according to plan. It's fine because the next attempt, she actually kills the bridge trio and we're back to the final group. I said nothing, very curious to see how she would handle this. Eventually, after a lot of thinking, she just sprints straight through. Hey, not everything needs to be a 200 IQ big boy play. If it works, it works. She reaches Edgar, the warden of the castle, and her first observation is, this guy looks really depressed, is he okay? Then when he gives her the sacrificial twig reward, she asks, what am I supposed to do with this? Plant a tree? And I was like, I have no idea actually. With the castle fully explored, spirits are high, and Amy heads back to Limgrave. At one point, she finds a hidden room housing a sorcerer merchant and immediately notices the glowing blue decorations on the ground. She says, these blue things look nice. Why can't I have one? They would sell for some good monies. Can I pick them up? I explain they're just decorations, and she replies, well, that doesn't make any sense, and it's disappointing. They're right there. After wandering Limgrave and killing some more enemies, Amy racks up enough runes for a final level up. This brings her to level 26, and I tell her, I think you're ready to go back to Margit. She nervously agrees. 11 days of preparation have brought us to this final confrontation. Cue the boss music. Attempt 1 is a solid effort. With Roger's help, she staggers Margit twice and gets him to about 50% health. Already a huge improvement on her previous attempts. Life number 2 goes even better. She dodges well, but wastes time replenishing FP mid-fight, which leads to Roger dying early. And just as she's trying to dodge a critical combo, a DualSense battery level low notification pops up. Perfect timing. Yes, she probably would have died anyway, but still not ideal. Getting Margit to 10% health is still great progress though. I was kind of shocked by this, but was it all a fluke? At this point, she tells me, he's a lot faster and more scary when my friend is dead. I agree. A human meat shield is pretty useful. For attempt 3, Margit's long combos ravage her repeatedly. Too many R words there, that's my bad, didn't mean to do that. What am I gonna do? Go back in the script? It's too late. She's got just enough health to not die instantly though, and despite these setbacks, manages to get him to around 18% health. Amy complains, I wish he would stop saying, put these foolish ambitions to rest. Why does he keep saying that? I'm like, It's kind of his favorite thing to say. Then she said, dying over and over just makes me feel so bad about myself. I don't understand why people like this. I was like, what you need to understand is gamers thrive on negative emotion. On attempt 4, Amy does something completely unexpected. In the opening moments, she tries to out-jump attack Margit's jump attack. I have no idea where she got that insane big dick idea from. She's also spamming dodge roll a lot more than she needs to. This is causing her to waste time, run out of stamina, and miss key punish windows. Despite this, she gets Margit to about 25% health. Ironically, on attempt 6, Amy gets a few insanely good dodges off, avoiding some of Margit's big boy attacks. Unfortunately though, she also keeps crouching mid-combat, which is making her way less effective. She eventually dies to one of Margit's infinite combos, but still manages to get him to about 14% health. On attempt 7, she dances a little too close to the edge. Oh. On attempt 8, Margit is pissed and goes maximum aggression for some reason. Towards the end of the fight, Amy is desperate to heal, but Margit never gives her a moment to breathe. He just doesn't let up, and Amy dies without ever getting the chance to heal. I was like, damn, what in the shadow of the Erd tree is going on here? On attempt number 10, Amy accidentally drinks her health flask when she meant to drink her FP flask so she could get back to using Unsheath. This costs her valuable seconds so that by the time she fixes her mistake and actually gets back in, Roger is basically dead. She still manages to get Margit to about 25% health, but it's not enough, Dad. What if I want wings? On attempt 11, Amy isn't even that close to the edge, but Margit's shockwave hits her so... This one was kind of unlucky, but if she had dodged the huge jumping attack instead of going for a punish, she would have been fine. It's attempt 12 and everything looks perfect. Margit is down to 30% health and Roger is still pretty healthy at half HP. In her excitement, Amy toggles off her sword, switching to one-handing the katana. She runs in to do an unsheathed slash, but her character just kicks instead. She sees something is wrong and quickly fixes it, but Roger's dead and her advantage is gone. It goes from her best ever run to just another attempt in seconds. Attempt 13 has the strongest opening I've ever seen against Margit. Even the game couldn't believe how fast she just killed herself. It took a full 5 seconds for the "you died" text to even appear. The game was like, wait, what just happened? Lamau? By attempt 16, it's clear that if Roger dies early, it's going to be almost impossible for Amy to secure the kill. So her current strategy is to get as much damage in as possible while Roger is alive. That being said, Margit knocks her off the edge again, LMAO. Amy perseveres and is slowly learning to dance. Attempt 17 gets Margit to 20% health. Attempt 18 gets Margit to 14% health. Attempt 19 gets Margit to 21% health. She's consistently getting him to the final quarter, and I can tell we're in the end zone. It's attempt 20 and Amy's locked in. This is almost the exact same spot as earlier. I ask her why she keeps getting near the edge and she tells me, I never know when I'm near the edge. I'm always too busy focusing on the boss. And I was like, that's actually fair enough. By attempt 21, the stars are beginning to align. Margit is laser focused on Rog. Amy gets a long damage window, a stagger. Margit keeps targeting Roger until he dies. Amy has a huge window to pump damage into Margit. She gets him to about 3% health, and she's still at full health. Ooh woo, this is the perfect setup. But then, Roger's gone. Now it's a 1v1. Margie lands a 3-hit combo and almost knocks Amy off again. God, that would have been so funny. Amy dodge rolls furiously to make some space, but Margit smells blood. He throws a dagger and lunges to finish her off. Amy was 1 hit away. But to my surprise, she doesn't seem frustrated. Amy takes a moment to recoup. Her fingers are hurting. I can tell she's getting tired, but she's also locked in. It's the next attempt. And now Amy's in the flow state. She eats a dagger, but double rolls the opening jump successfully. Then fails her unsheathed punish. You hate to see that. Margit starts a long combo, but ends up targeting no one with it. A lucky break. Amy lands 2 unsheathes, which secures a poise break at 70% health. Some light attacks, and Margit is transitioning to phase 2. Roger's still at 90% health. Could this be the run? Amy takes a hit, but uses it to dodge Margie's big ground pound. He's clearly rattled and backs right off, which gives Amy a perfect moment to heal. She's back in with an unsheath, then misses 2 light attacks. Ooh. Amy eats half a combo, but rolls away just in time. Roger gets a huge stagger on Margit with 30% health remaining. ring. Amy's right there with an unchi. Her and Rogier are side by side spamming attacks like a couple of dinky guards on patrol in Limgrave. He lands another big sweep and Amy is an inch from death herself. I'm rock hard and having a panic attack. Margaret focuses Roger one last time. Amy lands the light attack. It's over. She's done it. She's done it! At first, Amy didn't even realize what happened. She's still healing and attacking and crouching accidentally, and I'm like, babe, you got him. She's like, what, did I? Then smiles and lets out a big squeal. As the game pop-up reads, Roger has returned to his world. Amy says, and thanks to my little friend, I couldn't have done it without him. Compliments to the chef, Rog. If you want to help me make these green screen videos and get in the credits, you can check out the Patreon. This video took months longer than expected because my son, who is now 6 months old, is extremely difficult and cute. Let's just say working from home with a baby is a very mixed bag. Amy also played Destiny 2 exactly like she played Elden Ring, and I turned that journey into the video that's on screen now. It's called What Destiny 2 is Like for My Non-Gamer Wife. So go ahead and watch that. Or give me some money on Patreon, please, I really need that.